We're going to be making chicken parmesan with homemade tomato sauce. So gather up your ingredients and let's get started. The first thing that we're going to make is the tomato sauce. Begin by boiling a pot with enough water to cover the tops of all the tomatoes. While the water's boiling, we're going to prep a few things. Start by finely chopping a handful of fresh basil. Now, I picked this fresh from my garden, and I highly recommend you plant one yourself. It's an easy plant to grow and it requires very little maintenance. Even if you live in an apartment, you can plant it in a pot and grow it on your balcony. Fresh basil will make a noticeable difference in your food, and you won't end up in a situation where you forgot to buy it at the store. Now we're going to take about 2 pounds of tomatoes and score them all the way around. All you want to do is penetrate the skin. We'll score around the tomatoes twice, making an X at the top. When you're done, it should look something like this. When the water's boiled, we'll either set them in a bowl and pour the water over the top, or just fully submerge the tomatoes in the water in the pot. It's probably a good idea to have a big enough pot where the water doesn't end up spilling out, just like it did on me. Now we're not actually trying to boil the tomatoes, we just want to set them in there for about a minute, because that'll make it a lot easier for us to peel them. Here you'll see the purpose of us scoring the tomatoes beforehand. It's going to make it very easy to peel. And once you're done peeling, we'll just chop them into quarters. Keeping in mind how big your food processor is, because you may have to chop them even smaller. Now you can de-seed the tomatoes if you prefer, but I just leave them in because it doesn't really bother me. Put the chopped tomatoes into the food processor. I'm only going to process it for about 10 seconds, but you can do it for as long or as short as you like, depending on how smooth you want your tomato sauce to be. Personally, I like mine slightly chunky. Now in an empty pot, we'll just add the tomatoes in and turn the fire on low. I usually use a half a can of tomato paste here, which is about 3 ounces, but you can use more or less depending on your taste. I just caution against using too much because it makes the tomato sauce way too rich. After you stir the tomato paste into the sauce, let it cook for about 5 minutes over low heat, stirring occasionally. Then add 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil and stir that in. Make sure you get this mixed up really well. Add a tablespoon of white granulated sugar and stir that in. 2 tablespoons of salt and stir it in. Add 1.5 teaspoons of dried oregano and stir it in. Then crack about 1 to 2 teaspoons of black pepper and stir that in. Let that simmer for about 20 minutes and then turn the fire off and add your fresh basil. Now to the chicken. It'll be boneless, skinless chicken breasts. I'm going to show you how to do it two ways. One with one big cutlet and then two smaller cutlets. If you want smaller cutlets, just take the breast and cut it in half lengthwise. It's probably a good idea to cut off all the excess fat. Now if you want a big cutlet, you're going to start by cutting it lengthwise again, just kind of opening it up as you go, basically like you're butterflying it. Once you get your cutlets cut up how you want them, we're going to make sure that the meat's even all the way around. Start by placing one of them between some saran wrap. All we're going to do is lightly beat this until the meat is about 1/4 inch thick all the way around. If you don't have a little mallet like the one I'm using, you can just use a rolling pin or something similar. Now you don't have to hit this too hard. It should be pretty intuitive on how much pressure to apply. Just make sure to get this an even 1/4 inch thick. Now to begin the breading process. First off, make sure you have a bigger plate than the one I'm using. You want to make sure that you use enough breadcrumbs to completely cover each of your cutlets. Into the breadcrumbs, we're going to grate us up some Parmesan cheese. Now I understand this can be a painstaking process, so if you want, you can just use store-bought freshly grated Parmesan cheese. But I'm just going to soldier along grating up this cheese. Now you can make it as cheesy as you want, but probably a good rule of thumb is to use as much cheese as you use breadcrumbs. When you get your desired amount of cheese, next thing you want to do is make sure that you get it all nice and mixed up together. Between missing footage and a terrible angle here, we have sloppy camera work, but we want to go ahead and beat 2 eggs and put them on one plate. And then on a third plate, you just want to make sure that you have enough all-purpose flour. Now we're going to begin the breading process. Take one of your cutlets and stick it in the flour. Make sure you completely cover the cutlet with the flour. Now flour sticks to meat. Egg sticks to flour. Just make sure you let some of the excess egg drip off the edge. And the breadcrumbs will stick to the eggs. Again, make sure that you get this fully covered with the breadcrumbs. Pat your little chicken cutlet down in there a few times. You just want to make sure that you don't have any uncovered pieces of meat. Every little nook and cranny is filled in. Repeat the same process with the other cutlets. Once you're finished with the breading, we're going to fry these up in a pan. Start by adding a little bit of olive oil and getting that hot. And again, sorry for missing footage. But when the oil is hot, we're going to add in the cutlets and let them cook for about 2 minutes. You'll know they're ready to flip when they got this nice golden brown edge. Let them cook on this side for the same amount of time, which is again roughly about 2 minutes. And this is how they should look when you're done frying them. At this point, we'll preheat our oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Now grab your casserole dish and just add a small layer of tomato sauce at the bottom. Grab each of your cutlets and lay them evenly into the dish on top of the tomato sauce. And cover each of the cutlets with a little bit more of the tomato sauce. Make sure you get the sauce evenly spread to completely cover the tops of each chicken. Now we'll finish it off with as much mozzarella cheese as you want. Just make sure you're covering the cutlets and not just empty space in the pan. When the oven's finished preheating, place it on the middle oven rack for 15 minutes. When it's done, the cheese should be completely melted and the tomato sauce will be bubbling on the edges. Wow, does that look good? I think I'm going to take the big one for myself. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy it, please remember to like and subscribe. Also, share it with a friend.